speaking of drafts, Morgan Rielly, your indelible mark. And I know that you were excited at the time. You said you would have selected him first overall. There was a lot of people that doubted you at the time. You said, no, I know with this guy. What did you know that other teams didn't know about Morgan Rielly?
Well, his draft year, he hardly played. He blew out his knee. So he didn't play until, he played 11 games at the end of the year. But this is a kid, when the team came back from road trips, they'd get back to Moose Jaw at 3 a.m, and he'd be there on his crutches to say hello, to welcome him back home. This kind of kid he is. He's an unbelievable kid. And we had him ranked number 1. So that year, he only played those half a dozen games or so, 15 games at the end of the year. We had triple coverage we had 5 or 6 scouts at those games, whereas normally you'd have 2 or 3, and every team did. So there's 90, 100 scouts in the building watching his last 10 games. I had the video guy cut out every one of his shifts. I watched every shift he played that year twice. Watched it once, then came back and watched it again. His skating ability and his hockey IQ, we had him rated number 1. And I took him and I said, we had you rated number 1. And people say, oh, you probably said it to everyone. I said, no, I didn't say that to Nazem Kadri. We didn't have Nazem Kadri number 1. We had him at 7 or wherever we took him. So I know people say, oh, probably just said that to say it. Morgan Rielly's a friend of mine. He's turned into a great player, but we're little doubt about him at all. We had him number 1. And fortunately, 4 teams screwed up and took someone else, and we got him.
Yeah.
It's strange because I thought you really wanted Neil Yakupov there, Brian.
Oh, yeah. Worst interview I've ever had.
What happened?
Well, first off, he was angry that he was there. He was like, why am I talking to you guys? You're picking 5th. Why am I even here? I'm not going to be there at 5. So I hated him right out of the gate. And he was just surly and snarly. And I thought John Lilly, who was one of our amateur scouts, I thought John Lilly and he were going to get in a fist fight.
Wow.
Yeah, he's just a jerk. Just a terrible interview.
Wow.
So it went well.
That's really surprising for an 18-year-old to walk into a situation like that.
Listen, I remember Thomas Vanek, who's a great kid. Thomas Vanek came in, and we were picking, I don't know where we picked that year, 10th or 11th. And he was clearly bored, clearly thinking to himself, why am I doing this interview? There's no way I'll be there at 10 or 11. And I barked at him. I said, listen, young man, you should look at my record. I've been known to move up and get guys that I like. So start paying attention. And to his credit, he did. He sat up at attention and started paying attention and put more into the interview. I really liked him by the end of it. But first 5 minutes, he was like, what am I doing here? I'm like, wake up, kid.
Wow.
Brian, you touched on this briefly before, but we have this debate on the podcast all the time. It's just how much of the draft is luck? Because you go into it with a strategy and all these scouts, they scout all these guys, and then you go to the draft and a future Hall of Famer gets drafted in the 3rd round. So how much of that is really just luck?
Well, over time, Abraham Lincoln said, funny thing about luck is the harder I work, the more luck I seem to have. So over time, I think you need luck to win the cup. So we won the Stanley Cup. We beat Vancouver 4-1, but 2 of those games were double overtime. And a 3rd game was overtime. We came that close to losing that round. And I think that team could beat every team that's won the cup since. And so that was a great team. And we came that close to being eliminated in the 2nd round with Vancouver. So you need some luck. But over time, if you're skilled at what you do, over time, your record as a drafter or a trader will show up. And you'll say, well, this guy had some good drafts, had some bad drafts. But, and people will remember me. They'll say, oh, drafted Chris Pronger 2nd overall, drafted the Twins. They'll be the drafts that they remember, not the ones where I took 5 guys that never played.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes comes from someone who currently works for an NHL team. And it is the best team in hockey rarely wins the Stanley Cup. First of all, I want to know what you think of that quote. Second of all, I want to know, do you think the 2007 Ducks were the best team you ever managed, or was it a different one?
Well, first off, I don't agree with that. I think very often it is the best team that wins the cup. There is an endurance part of it that's really critical. Like Dallas last year just couldn't stay in there with Tampa. Como got hurt. Hintz got hurt. And a lot of it is you got to be durable, especially those last couple rounds. It's a war. The best team I ever had, I think my guys would argue in Vancouver in like 2003, that group with the Twins and the West Coast Express line, that they could have beaten that Anaheim team. But unless you have playoff success, you can't brag. And that's why I will never tell you that the Anaheim Ducks are one of the great teams ever, because great teams repeat, and we never repeated. Mm-hmm. So to me, I think that team could beat every team that's won the Cup since, but we didn't repeat. So it will never be remembered as one of the great teams. The great teams do it more than once, and we didn't. We just had too much cap trouble the next year. Tamu retired, Scotty retired, then they both came back, and we were scrambling. But I think that team, and not just Brian Burke's view, because this will sound arrogant. Be like, oh, Brian Burke. People don't like me anyway. They'll be like, he's saying his team was the best team ever. I'm not. What I'm saying is I think that team could have beaten every team that's won since 07. And our players believe that too. Like I had this conversation with Chris Pronger and Tamu Solane, Scott Niedermayer. They believe that too. So it's not just my view on life.